This week at Book Club, I feel like we've hit a momentous point. Not only have we reached a pivotal point in the book, but in our church. As we took the 100-day pledge ourselves last week, this week we get to see the people in our book reach a 365-day milestone of taking this pledge, asking what would Jesus do for a whole year. So where will we be in 100 days' time, or even in a year's time, for making this promise with Jesus? What will have changed, deepened, escalated in us and around us as these days pass? For our book church, we see the results in sacrificial obedience through their businesses, finances, politics, social structures, families, romances and purposes. They are all affected, and how couldn't they be as they follow in Jesus' steps? But as chapter 16 rounds off the current positions of each character in the midst of the pledge, we can see romance and tragedy blended together. Some had lost family, friends, opportunities, security, and even laid down their dreams. But what they were exchanging them for was a life and simultaneous movement with Jesus, an uncompromising presence with God, a sheer and evident shift with the Holy Spirit. They were in it, seeing it, being it. Revival was in the atmosphere. That sounds like a hard but fair enough exchange as they moved from the monotonous to the sacred. And now this movement was like a wave, taking more and more ground, inspiring churches across the country, sifting through communities to unite them stronger, revolutionising methods and giving a new definition of discipleship. As I read this, I recognised something familiar. Before we even opened the pages of the book, we were seeking this, being this. It's been on our wall since we walked into this joint. Life, isn't that our mission? We're loving Jesus by following in his steps, which inspires the church, which forms communities, which will equip us for life. I see us in these pages, and I noticed that for our characters, the first two wouldn't have developed so strongly without the deployment of the second two. We need community and equipping to love and follow Jesus in this way, and to inspire ourselves, never mind our church or the churches around us. However, with the pandemic, we can see community disintegrated around us. Getting to church, to team, to life group, to community is no longer a biggie. Our capacities have been altered. What is still by seeing for our lives? But we see from this book and lessons from time and history that lone rangers rarely make it out in good shape. They might have less hassle in the short term with not having to compromise, but the long-term effect of isolation is devastating. We aren't meant to survive alone. I was reminded this week of Psalm 68:6 and how God sets the lonely in families, how he orchestrates a place of belonging and an invitation for us to be our truest selves, how he surrounds us so that we can survive and thrive. God is intent on us having family, but through this season, that God-designed system has been disrupted. The family that God has worked so hard to build so our lives thrive is being shredded by our own doing. Let's not fail to appreciate the circle God has diligently around us. Get into community. And as our community begins to form around Church Collective, let's get equipped for discipleship, for this mission, this pledge there. Not just in theory, but in experience as we move together in community. Our characters would never have made it without each other. And they never would have altered or inspired the rest of the world. In our final chapters for this week, we are introduced to another church who were getting inspired to carry out the pledge in their lives. We meet the pastor of the church, but we also meet two young girls, Rose and Felicia. And if you know anything about pop culture, you will know how hard it is for me to say Felicia in this tone and manner without saying bye in front of it. But unlike that Felicia, this Felicia wasn't going anywhere. She decided to stay on after church to commit to the pledge, in spite of her, can I say this, incredibly annoying sister. And when Felicia goes home, we see where Rose gets it from, their incredibly annoying dad. We discover that this family is incredibly wealthy and very high in social status. And we also discover that Felicia and Rose have a very sick mum. And where her mum encourages Felicia to do the pledge, her dad couldn't flatten her desires anymore. We read that she hesitated to describe her heart to do what Jesus would do, as much as describing a wonderful sunset to one who only talked about bad weather. At this point, let's take a second to just remember that as we gather in community around the pledge, let's not be the weatherman with a negative weather report, but let's be sunset seekers and enthusiasts. This pledge could change our lives forever and the lives of those around us if we go for it. So let's see what happens in these 100 days, and let's see what happens to our characters as we read the next 3 chapters for next week. Hear or read the book now at www.gpastures.co.uk/in his steps.